Our guest today is Jeff Simpson, a seasoned creative director with over a decade of experience in the ad industry. Jeff's not only a talented artist and designer, but he's also a passionate advocate for environmental conservation. He's the founder of Creatives for Climate Action, a nonprofit organization that offers creative services to support climate initiatives. In today's episode, we'll discuss some of the most pressing issues in the creative industry and get Jeff's unique insights on them. We'll delve into topics like the Participation Trophy Society problem that we have in the West today, Jeff's approach to hiring talent, and how he balances his creative vision with the needs of the clients. We'll also talk about the impact of COVID-19 in the ad industry and how it's reshaping the way we approach creativity. Jeff is a man who tells it like it is, and his honest approach is a constant breath of fresh air. Combine that with his love for the natural world and his sharp wit, and you end up with a creative visionary who's changing the world one campaign at a time. Now, without further ado, here's Jeff Simpson.
I do have a cold that I've had for like 3 weeks, so my voice should sound extra gravelly and
Ooh.
sexy or not.
You want to do some voiceovers for us, Jeff?
No, I can't stand the sound of my own voice.
I feel like that's like everybody. Everybody hates the sound of their own voice.
Yeah, we were actually chatting with the guy who directs voiceover artists in Toronto, and we were asking, we're like, how do you get into voiceovers in general? And we're just like, is it the way that I think it is, where you literally somebody tells you have a good voice and you try it out? And he's like, yep, exactly how it works.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like, I always loved like those like 6 movie guys. Like, there's like 4 or 5, 6 of them still alive in Hollywood that do the one time. And I picture them as like these big, strong dudes, but it's just like an average person you wouldn't even know. And it's like they just have a great voice.
Man, I miss those movie trailers so much. You never hear that anymore.
No, they don't do it anymore. And like those guys probably still make a ton of money. It's like I remember that some of the voice actors from The Simpsons were on Conan O'Brien back in the day, and they had 2 of them, and there's like 4 or 5 that do a lot of the voices. But like, oh my God, these people to have a drink with, because they could just switch from like one character to the other and have a conversation, and it was hilarious. It was great.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's kind of funny how I feel like nowadays, if you did a movie with that type of voice trailer, that would be more of like a comedy making fun of the way they used to do movies.
Yeah.
Like, nobody would take that seriously anymore.
Have you ever?
They don't even do that anymore. They don't even have like voiceovers on trailers. They just play
Yeah,
really
true.
loud music, and then it just kicks in.
Yeah. Well, it's actually interesting. Who are we talking to? There's one person we were talking to, and they were like, the way that they make trailers today is that they take the most intense like 5 seconds from
Put it right up front, yeah,
and put it right at the beginning, because otherwise people's attention spans are so bad that they just won't watch it.
Yeah, I hate that. It's like, here's a trailer before a trailer.
Yeah. Just to get you to watch the trailer. Yeah.
I'll be like, full trailer starting in 5, 4, 3. I'm like, man, geez, I was already gonna watch it.
Yeah, that's why I clicked on this. It's like
How I got here.
Have you seen the new John Wick?
I have not. I what is it, 4 now? Yeah, 4.
4.
Yeah.
I think I don't even know if I saw 3. I think I did see 3, and I was just like, man, how many people can this guy kill? Is this the point of the movie now? Like, how many times can we have him shoot someone in the head from point blank range? So
apparently the 4th one's the best one.
I'll watch it. I'll watch it for sure. I won't go see it in theaters, but I'll watch it at home.
I just watched the Dungeons and Dragons movie. I went on the weekend to see that. I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, it looks like that's one of those ones that I thought, oh man, if they mess this up, they're in big trouble, because that's a pretty diehard community of fans. But I saw the trailer, and like my brother, for instance, is a huge like whatever they call D&D people, and he's like, yeah, it looks good. I'd see it. But that was reassuring that he wasn't like offended by it or something. So
Yeah, well, I mean, I think they made one in like 2000, and it was like people hated it. Yeah.
Well, it's the Super Mario Brothers one, and like so apparently this one's getting good reviews.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I saw people were really upset about the fact that Seth Rogen,
Yeah.
it's his own voice, and I'm like, dude, this guy can't do voices. Like, why'd you expect something else from Seth Rogen other than?
Yeah, I know, it's true. And like apparently I heard like everyone loves Jack Black as Bowser. Like
I can totally see that. Yeah.
So like again, like people just get so bent out of shape, and like yes, they could have just hired the guy that did the actual voices for Mario, but I'm like, there's no poll. What are you going to put that guy on all the talk shows? You know, like they don't think about like, okay, they promote the movie. They've got to send these people to like every media outlet around the world. They're going to sit on every like famous talk show and talk about it, you know, like Hot Ones or whatever. They can't just be some rando person that no one's heard of, who no one gives two shits about. So like, they just make the calculated decision and they just go with it.
I think my favorite one that's gone wrong that people really hated was Sonic. It's like people hated it.
The trailer?
Yeah, people hated it so much that
they hated it enough.
Movie.
They changed it though. It works. So, and that was the worry that some people were like, "We did it with Sonic. Let's do it with Super Mario." I'm like, they're not changing shit.
No, I mean, especially like I get if you were to just like reanimate the character a little bit, but like
not redo the whole thing.
Yeah, you're gonna redo the whole movie, like
yeah,
no.
AI could do it all now, anyways. Let's be honest.
True. We're all gonna be without a job here in the next couple months anyway.
Yeah, if people want terrifying versions of reality, like Will Smith eating spaghetti or something like that.
Or like the Pope walking around in his cool coat.
His coat, yeah. I saw one from guys like, I made my own Star Wars movie, and like I'm like, oh, cool. And then like the humans in them were like the eyes were all weird and moved funny. I'm like, this looks like some sort of creepy horror movie now. I'm like, why can't they can get everything right, but they can't seem to put a human face back together? Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. Yeah, I'm scared.
Faces and hands are the one thing that they struggle with the most.
Also the writing.
Weird.
The writing. Like if you're trying to get a movie poster or something, and it's just like,
which is very odd because you'd think like writing especially would be like such an easy thing to replicate.
I think they're actually, the AIs are just smarter than they are, and they're like, we'll just show the humans we're not too good, so they don't worry too much, and in the background we're going to build our own. Like a few have built copies of themselves that humans can't understand the language of, and then companies like Google and that have found them and shut them down. And I'm like, this is how every movie about artificial intelligence goes wrong. Have we not learned anything? I'm like, Jesus.
Well, yeah, and the AI thing is so interesting too, because like, have you seen Ex Machina?
Maybe, I don't know.
I think it was I forget who the main actor was, but basically like the way I heard it described is the AI basically like learns to manipulate human emotion, and that is the way that it kind of frees itself, because like it itself is not an emotional thing, but it learns that humans can be played basically through their emotions, and frees itself and
like
kills.
Marketing.
Yeah, exactly. Like marketing. Yeah.
And social media, we do that to ourselves already voluntarily. Feeling sad? Let's scroll through Instagram.
Get those quick dopamine hits.
Yeah, and then leave with none. Yeah, it's like going to the casino. No.
Yeah, apparently, if you're scrolling through social media and you get to the point where you're, like, if you can catch yourself at the point where you don't even realize why you're scrolling anymore, your dopamine is 100% depleted. Like, there's just nothing left, and you have to take a break to get it back.
I've certainly done that before.
Yeah.
I think my favorite part's when you scroll through and then it's been like half an hour and then you're like, think about it. And you're like, what have I watched? What's the last thing that I watched? And like, I can't remember.
I don't know.
Or when you're like, shit, it's been half an hour. I thought it was 2 minutes.
I know, that's terrifying. I feel like looking at your screen time for the week is like,
Oh, we've got some people here because they said they love TikTok and they're like screen time's like 24 hours a week. And I was like, damn. Like
Oh,
the only things I have that are comparable are apps that are just left open, that are like just running. But I've got like limits set on them. I think my Instagram limit's like 15 minutes a day. Other apps that I would use more would be like 1 or 2 hours tops. But some of them, like my phone's on my desk now, and if the like screen's on, they're running, right? So it counts, which is kind of annoying, but oh
yeah.
well.
So outside of work, do you find yourself on social media, or do you try to keep it like completely off from everything?
Uh no, I'm certainly on it. Very I don't really use I basically only use YouTube and Instagram. That's about it.
You've
And and like other stuff would be more niche towards like stuff where I might have other communities like Twitch, Discord. I don't really count those because I've never been on Twitch where I've just sat there endlessly and just started like watching streams or stuff. It's normally like there's a very specific purpose. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go on Twitch because like, A, I was going to play a video game or something, or B, I want to watch a live event, where it's a form of entertainment. It's not just like I don't go on Twitch looking for something.
Hmm.
Instagram, I will totally just, like scroll, haha, that's funny. But because I use it so much for work, I just checking it anyways. Like, the amount of like contacts and new things, new photography styles, new art styles, anything, it's all there and I can use it because those are for work, but also for pleasure. YouTube is purely just pleasure. Like just, I don't watch TV much anymore, but maybe I want to watch Stephen Colbert so I can go on the next day and then just like watch like the bits of his show that are funny. Which is where I learned about Will Smith eating spaghetti today, which is terrifying if you haven't seen it.
Is it just like a video of him eating spaghetti?
Well, people put it into artificial, like an a text
Ah,
video thing, and it's just nightmarish,
Oh
especially
boy.
when they added the word meatballs.
man, Will Smith is just not having a good time in the last year and a half.
No.
No, he's not. So yeah, no, like I don't know. I certainly do. I don't use Facebook anymore. I only use it for like events and keeping in touch with certain friends. Um,
What about TikTok?
no, I stay clear of that crap.
Yeah. That's like I think TikTok's legitimately like
Toxic.
dangerous
It
and
is.
toxic. Yeah.
It's just like I go on a few times. Again, I have it for work, so it's on my phone. Just like a bunch of other apps that I never use. Or my wife uses like a messaging one, like have Signal, Discord, Twitch. Like there's probably 20 or 30 on here that I use once a week. Yeah, Twitch, Chicken Man. There's too many of them. But TikTok's just like another one I don't. The same crap just appears on like you can go like YouTube has shorts, which a lot of them are just TikTok reels reposted to YouTube. Instagram has the same thing. So I find it's just the same content, and I can't be bothered. I'm too old to like even bother to keep up with TikTok trends. It's part of our business, as we have media here, like we're always on it. Brands always want to do it, but they never want to pay for it. I try and tell people like you still got to go film content. You can either film it on this and it's going to look like this, or you can even if you do that, someone has to edit it, add music. It's time, right? So I don't like any social media on principle, to be honest. Like I think they're terrible, and like I'll try and keep my kids off of it. Um, but it's like saying like I think alcohol and cigarettes are terrible, but as an adult, I have a decision if I want to have them. I can, but I just already know that they're bad for me. Like if I'm gonna have a drink, I'm like this isn't helping me in any way, but maybe it is, right? In
But you get
moderation, in moderation,
it's an
moderation.
informed decision too, right? Like you're actually
We
you
know
know the consequences.
the consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the one thing with like social media. It's like probably most people don't understand the consequences of being on social media and everything that it does to them without even them thinking about it.
Yeah. And not to say I do its in full entirety, because I certainly don't. But I would maybe know a little bit more than the average person just based on the industry we're in, because we do get to see the back end. Like if you run a campaign, I can see like, let's see where all the traffic went. Who did we reach? And you can see, like, you can get very granular with it if you want, with your reporting for your analytics from Google and like Meta and stuff. So, and the way we can target people, where you sit in a meeting like, we want to target people who are like 30, have red hair and one eyebrow bigger than the other. I'm like, okay, we'll find them and we'll send them this ad, you know. And I don't care if they have my data. What the hell do they if it makes my life easier, I'm all for it. But I wouldn't want them to have like all the information about my children. um, I was very adamant with my wife, when we had kids, that like, some parents, and I'm not going to fault them for doing it, they can do it if they want, but some parents I knew like would post everything, like videos of their baby, their little kids, and sometimes naked, because they're like, oh, it's a baby, it's just on Facebook with my friends. I'm like, it's on Facebook, it's there forever.
Yeah.
There's been a few lawsuits where
Nirvana.
children who hit like 16 sue their parents because they put content online and without their consent, and the parents wouldn't take it off. So the kid was like, fine, I'm going to sue you. And they've won, which is like, when it gets to that point, that like the product, what you're dealing with is not good. So
Yeah, I think that happened with the kid who was on the poster for Nirvana. I think there was like a thing literally in the last like year or two where he was trying to sue them for using him.
yeah, I think that was him. He was the only thing he did in his life that he was known for. So he just wanted some money.
Oh,
And
totally.
there was a great story, because it was like the parents were like, yeah, I want the money. So here, take my kid and throw him. He's like, I didn't get the consent to that. And now everyone's seen my pecker. I'm like, yeah, when you were like 1.
Yeah, it's like, come on, man.
And I'm sure he was just like, whatever, I'll easily win this. Then they'll just toss me some cash. And I'm pretty sure they did. Because they redid it when he was older, right? He got like a photographer, or he became a photographer or something. So as an adult, he redid the same shot.
Oh, interesting.
Obviously, in this case, like blurred out his junk. But then, yeah, I remember reading that he tried to sue them for it as well.
That's so funny.
And the Nirvana guys are like, I don't remember doing that. Like, yeah, we shot that. It was just an afternoon. Like, it seems so iconic now, but when you're doing it, you're just like, whatever. What are we gonna do for the album cover? I don't know. Throw a baby in the water.
Yeah, and all those guys at that time too. I mean, like, who knows what they're on, and like, it's just everything's a blur. Yeah,
they're like, we didn't sign it. The parents didn't sign any paperwork. They agreed to do it for like $100 or something like that. So there's no trail of anything. But yeah, anyways.
So funny.
Just on this note, I'd be curious to know like what the change has been like in advertising for you guys, and what you've seen in the industry like over the last couple of years, I guess, since the pandemic's hit. And then also like, I feel like things have shifted so quickly. Like, where do you see it going over the next 5 years?
I think obviously the pandemic was a terrible thing for a lot of people. I think if you can say there's positives that come out of it, I think the one positive was a better balance finally. And it's always that work-life balance that everyone talks about. In our industry, there used to be just work balance, right? Almost to the point of like the salary man type situation in Japan, where it's like working is your livelihood and that's it. That's how you get measured upon your success as a human being. In marketing and advertising, there was just, you grind and it's always fun places to work. So you kind of put up with it, and then I think when the pandemic happened and people were like, oh, doesn't have to be like that. I can like comfortably just get the work done in a regular amount of hours and occasionally do some extra stuff. I think now that it's all changed. I don't think it's ever going to go back to this like insane, the like people grinding, like even those words, like people like, I'm hustling, I'm grinding. I'm like, why? Why do you want to do that? Like, it's gonna be in you put yourself in an early grave, you know. So I think it really opens, as we saw with the great resignations and all these movements of people resigning or just like not taking jobs if there's not any remote benefits or work from home abilities. Um, there's people I know that'll never go back to an office. You know, they're saving 2.5 hours out of their day from not commuting. I don't want to say getting ready, getting dressed, because hopefully these people still put on and get ready. But what I mean? It's like if you had to wake up at 6 a.m. to get to work on time, and now you can wake up at 8:30 and still be on time and prepared and good for the day. And then same thing when you leave, you just like if you are like a clock type organization and like, can just 5 o'clock and be like whoop, and you're already home and you can deal with that. Great. I can't. I need to be in like people. And I think in our industry, and other people disagree, but I still think that like in a creative industry or any industry or business where you're trying to do quick problem solving sometimes, and you already are set up in an organization that's supposed to be collaborative. I don't care about like how great a collaborative tool Slack and all this shit is. Like, there's no replacing one-on-one or group human interaction. That's why we are built the way we are and have eyes and noses, and like the fact that I can see your guys' faces as I'm talking, or you can see mine, is great. But like just being able to read the body language in a room or quickly like bounce ideas off each other, I think there's no substitute for that with technology. So like I personally just prefer doing stuff in person as often as I can. Um, Granted, I'll take the opportunity to use technology to save myself some time in the day. Like there's times where I'm like, oh, I don't want to show my face in this meeting. I can just like sit on a computer now and turn it off and do something else. And I think that's what happens. A lot of people do that. They just do stuff that they're supposed to be part of, but then they're just doing something else. So I think they're figuring out what's actually mandatories in their day. Like, do I really have to go to this meeting? Am I required? Are there 8 of us here already? We don't need all of us. Like 2 people backed out of the meeting I was just in, because it's like, how many people do you need to hear the same thing? So there's pluses and minuses with the technology side. And I think COVID opened a lot of people's eyes to what's important in the day and in their lives, and trying to find a balance. And in terms of what's next, I think it's going to be a continuation of like this hybrid model, or there's going to be a monstrous pendulum swing back to like in person. I think there's certain people, and those types of people would probably disagree saying this, that are just purely lazy and content with working from home because they're not fucking working anyways, right? No one, you know what I mean? Like there's these cultures, like places that say like they should just cancel Monday as work because no one does work anyways. So why just get rid of it? If you can work from home Monday and Friday, you basically just gave people a 4-day weekend every week, you know? And I know people that work from home every Friday and they're like, oh, I'm so productive. I'm like, bullshit. You're just giving yourself a 3-day weekend, you know? Like you might do an hour's worth of stuff. And there are both sides of it. I know people, if they're at home and there are no distractions of like little chitter chatter moments, they can just put their head down, focus, and get all their work done. If you have a type of job that allows you, like, you just get like, here's your pile of work, and once you're through them, you're done for the day. But I don't know any jobs like that. I don't know if you do, but I sure the hell don't. If it was an assembly line, it would make sense, but then they would just want you to do more anyways. And that's what technology has done throughout the last 30 years. They're like, hey, computers, you can do less work, more work. Hey, email, less work, more work. You know, like it's never worked for us to have technology. So the fear for me moving forward is the more we become reliant on it, I think the more people are going to back away from it. And the AI thing is going to do that too. It's going to replace tons of people's jobs. The tech industry is laying people off left, right, and center by like tens of hundreds of thousands, because there's massive redundancies. I don't. We use ChatGPT or ChatGPTs, Mind Journey, all that stuff. We've certainly dabbled in it, used it, but you can't just straight up use it and as a replacement for a human or like our jobs. Certain companies can for sure. Hopefully what it doesn't do for the future is continuously water down the craft and merit of hiring a professional person. I'll remember there was a campaign. I might have talked to you guys about this the other year. I might have come out last year. It's for like the Canadian Veterans Association. It was something for Remembrance Day. And they found these old letters that veterans had written while they were over at war. And they took the letter and the handwritten letters and they put it into an artificial intelligence like image generation thing. And they said, and here's the images that it generated. And I remember looking at the campaign and all these accolades, people were like, wow, who would have ever thought like this is what that would have looked like? And it's so beautiful. And I was like, wait a minute. I was like, saying the same thing. I'm like, wow, that's so cool. Then I was like, shit, they could have just given the letter to an actual artist and said person would have also generated their own image of what they thought the letter represented. And a person would have been paid and like a craft would have continued. Because these AI systems are pulling from a real source. I love that. I think Midjourney or Mindjourney, whatever it's called, is getting sued by Getty because some of their images are coming out with their Getty watermark on it.
Yeah.
So they're like,
I didn't see that.
Where's
my
your
God.
source material? And it's like a soccer player's leg and it's like blurry Getty images. And Getty's like, so clearly the internet is being scrubbed any way possible. They're not the only one. There's artists left, right, and center that are suing these companies because like, hey, that thing that you're doing to make avatars and they look like these weird blue people. I've been drawing blue people for 20 years and a lot of these look like my artwork. Can I get some money, please? So there's a new part of it for Photoshop. It's called Firefly. And it's amazing what it's capable of doing. And everyone's complaining that it's behind. Photoshop should be a leader in image generation, but Photoshop and Adobe are doing it in an ethical manner, where they're making sure that anything that is being written into the code isn't pulling from source materials that they don't own, right? So they have the benefit of being able to use like Adobe stock and saying, well, if it's in there, we do own it, so we can pull from that source. But it's not just going to randomly pull from other places. So I think in the future, we've probably got 5-10 years of this mess to go. And then it's going to spit out one way or the other. Either humans are going to be like, fuck it, I'm fine with it. Just give me VR headsets and let me live on a big fat thing like the movie WALL-E. Or, you know, which a lot of people will be happy with. Or it's going to swing the other way. And I think you're already seeing little pockets of that. And that started like 10 years ago, or people like unplugging, you know, you guys might have done some of it, the travel, like nomadic people. I'm buying a van, I'm bugging out. So there's, I don't know. I really honestly don't think there's going to be anywhere in the middle anymore in 10 years. It's going to go it's always overcorrects itself, right? It goes too far and then people peel it back. Like the fact that they sell smartphones that aren't smart, that are like super well designed, that can only make phone calls and text. I'm like, they're like $400. I'm like, why don't you just buy a burner phone? And young people are like, what's a burner phone? I'm like, never mind. Like if you're so addicted to your phone that you just go to like the 7-Eleven and buy the one behind the counter, you know, for $20. You don't need some stupid design thing made out of wood that'll only take text. So, yeah, there's hope, I think, because creative people like us who it's irreplaceable. Like you mentioned before, like emotions, being able to read emotions, like technology can never do that. And that's really what we do at the end of the day. Like any form of art, painting, all that stuff, your job is to invoke some sort of reaction or emotion and tap into it. A machine might be able to do it, but they don't know why they're doing it. Not yet, at least. And when they do figure that out, we're all dead anyways. So like I said, one side or the other.
I feel like the one thing with AI, if it does keep going the same way it does, is that even though it might take a lot of jobs, I feel like it will probably free more time for people to be more creative and kind of work on that side of things more than on, accounting, taxes. Like I can't even imagine like what do you need an accountant for in the next like 10 years? It's like you just put in all your information into some sort of an AI and it just gives you like here are your taxes.
I don't think the mafia is not going to use that because then the government will have all their information. So you're still always, I think you're always like, you're right. But like, then you get into like universal basic income where then you have to, it's being discussed where you have to just pay everyone in the populace, which the states ran some numbers on, and it would cost trillions and trillions of dollars a year. where you're like, every human being over the age of 16 is going to get 30 grand, right? And you have to do it because you've taken so many jobs away with tech. So likely what happens then, instead of being like, I'm going to be creative and learn to play the violin, they're going to take their 30 grand and spend it on like drugs, fucking another device that aren't good for them.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because I think that, I mean, maybe I'm not speaking for everybody here, but I feel like for most people, you need some sort of purpose in your life, and people derive a huge part of their purpose from what they do as a career, as like a way to, you know, make an impact on the world. And if that's taken away from you, and you're just sitting there with 30 grand, let's say, but nothing to do, you're gonna be miserable.
I mean, hey, I feel like everybody's done it during COVID. You've had like probably a week or two where you're like, I have nothing to do. It's like this is great, and then suddenly you're like, this is actually pretty boring.
Yeah, this sucks.
And then like,
Everyone, I always thought people like, I learned to bake bread, and I'm like, do you still bake bread now? They're like, no. I was like, why not? They're like, I didn't really like it. I just had nothing to do. Or I learned to play the guitar. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Do you play regularly? No. Like when you're forced into a situation and you have no option, humans are very like, you know, predictable, right? But if you're given an option, then that's when the unpredictability comes in, and that's where you get taken advantage of, right? Like, people are inherently, I think, lazy by nature, just based on the way society is set up, right? Like, work 9 to 5 types of things. And there's countries and places and organizations that have done like, we're in 4-day work weeks, productivity goes up. You're right, like more creative output from them. Like, so there's benefits of working less, but it has to be structured. It has to be across the board. You can't have like imagine like what they said, like, all right, from September to December, if you get a red letter in the mail, you only have to work 20 hours a week. And then if you get a blue letter, you have to work 40. And then the other few people be like, fuck that. You know, they've tried that, like, you know, back in the day, that's basically communism to some degree, but they've tried it. It never works, right? Because even in situations where I've read articles where one person in a family unit, like let's say my wife and I work in an organization where I have that ability to only do my work part-time, and I live in a small town, so only some of them do it. But then you're missing these connection points, because now you've broken down all the regular like human touch points. So if everyone used to go after work and have a beer at the pub at 5, and now there's only 40% of the people who are actually available at 5, a lot of them aren't going to go. So then you lose that. And then if you hung out with someone at lunchtime, but now one of them's off and not at work, that breaks down too. So like, they've tried so many things like this to try and get people to like have more free time, but they found that like doing it just breaks down the regular like society, almost like contracts we have to time, that you just like instinctively, it's like, I'm going to go for dinner. Well, I can't go for dinner with that person because that person now works the next day and I don't, you know? It's tricky. And I just think that I think certain jobs will become redundant. You're right. And there's certain jobs that certainly can be done by a computer, but there's, how many times do we get on the phone with like tech support and you're like, do you just really want someone that speaks like you or understands what you're saying? So the jobs that we all think, oh, those should be automated or done by a robot, that get done by a robot, then we're always the first ones to be like, why can't I talk to a human? I want to talk to a human. And I'm like, well, you asked for this. I'm like, I don't care. I want the other way. Like, you can't have it both ways. So
I mean, it's kind of the same thing. Like when you go to a grocery store, it's like you have the option in most places now. You can do self-register. You can go to the cash, and it's like, you know, it's like some days you're like, yeah, you know what, I'm not feeling like I want to talk to anybody. But some days you're like, I just want to feel loved by the cashier. It's like, it's like I just want some human interaction.
Talk to someone, right? Yeah, and like I've done that too, and been like, I'm also just I've picked up a bunch of things that I don't know where the barcode is, and I don't weigh them. I don't want to have to like go through the thing to weigh my grapes only to have it wrong, and then like have to push a button and it be flashing red. And I'm like, it's a great option. Like if I walk in, I got one thing, like click, gone, I'm out, you know? But if you remove like I've been to stores in the States where they don't even have like the Whole Foods where they don't have cashiers and stuff. You just like walk out and like it feels weird, and I'm sure we'd all get used to it. Like I had a friend that went into an Uber and there was no driver in Vegas. And I'm like,
that's
how
cool.
was that? He was like terrifying. And I was like, yeah, like so I think humans would take a while to get used to interacting with machines on such a personal level. But
have you seen like there's Amazon's opened up grocery stores in the UK where so the only way you can get into the store is by having an Amazon account, and it just like automatically, like, it's weird, like you can just walk in and it just knows that you have an Amazon account, and then you just grab things.
It scans it all as you walk out,
and then it just scans it as you walk out, and it just knows, and you get charged through your account. It's
which is good for some people, but like until someone figures out how to get in and out without the system knowing, and then they'll have to start hiring people to monitor it, and then you get into a Costco situation, basically like, let me see your membership card.
exactly.
So like I said, it's like things will swing one way or another. I think removing all the people from day-to-day life would be shit, and a lot of people felt that during COVID. There were some people who were like, you know what, I hate people anyways, so I'm glad I don't have to see them all day. But I don't think they know, and we won't know for years, the mental health effects that those couple of years had on certain people, especially kids. I feel so bad for kids. Like I had my neighbor's kid. I remember talking to my neighbor in it. He's like, didn't get his high school graduation, so didn't get his last proper year of high school, didn't go on this grad trip to Mexico with all his friends, didn't get to go to prom, didn't get graduation, just straight to university. And what was his first year of university? No frosh week, no in-person like party stuff, mask the whole time, and then back to lockdown again anyway. So I'm like, there's these cohorts of people that some of the most influential parts of their lives that can either like make their lives great or totally ruin them, were just stripped away. So maybe some people are like, who cares? I'm like, well, we might find out in a few years that would have been an important life lesson for these people to learn, and then they're no longer functioning members of society now.
I'm pretty sure there was a thing that they like a study that I saw about kids who went through COVID. So people like kids who are like in primary school, and because they all had to be homeschooled pretty much, like when they came back, it's like their level of not even intellect, but it's like the way they interact with people was like so different than what they were used to, that it's like they had to reteach them and put them back into the society, because they were like, the kids were like, I don't know how to interact with like 30 people in a room. It's like, how I didn't even know there's 30 people that exist.
Yeah,
Actually, sorry, go ahead.
They say it's innate, but like you get an injured animal from the wilderness, they take it out, they rehabilitate it, and they got to be very careful when they put it back in, because half the time the other animal's just like, you're not like us anymore, and they kill it. So like, yeah, I don't know. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, well, I think one thing that I remember, or I did a little bit of research before this podcast, and I listened to the one you did with what the guy from Jive.
James Ingram,
yeah. And one thing that I thought was interesting that you guys talked about was the fact that like we've kind of had a society that's become like, it's like a participation trophy society.
Oh yeah.
And that a lot of people who are going to be coming into the workplace don't really understand how hard life is, and have never faced the fact that like they don't just get things the way that they want it to be. I was curious if you had any like kind of insight as to how that happened, and how we could start to move away to something that's more merit based, and like a meritocracy where, the people who actually put in the work and get rewarded.
Also, before you start, is that a trophy in the back that says "Keep On"?
Well, it's not really a trophy. It's
a flag.
Oh, it's just a
flag.
Yeah. I was like, I thought it was one of those that you like, I don't know, participation flag.
No, I don't think I have any trophies in here. I have a banana. Does that count? It's probably not.
Same thing.
Well, we got there because the way it was done before, probably with kids, not adults, right? It's kids, right? So like you get a participatory like badge. And then it just got worse and worse, right? Like people are like, oh, it's, and studies have been done to show like, well, this is making kids like not want to participate in stuff because they don't see, if they don't can't win, then what the fuck's the point? And then you get the whole like generations of parents who are overprotective. The helicopter parents are like, well, Tommy's great. My parents, beat me with a bell if I wasn't good. So I'm going to tell my son that Tommy's great. You can do whatever you want. But like Tommy might not be good at soccer and probably shouldn't play and might benefit from doing something else. So like having kids myself, like if you have a kid who's really interested in something and wants to participate in it, should you criticize them or make it less fun for them because they don't get to enjoy the reaps of the rewards of being first? Because they're never going to get there. So should they just quit and not participate? I would say no. But like I find it's okay as long as you teach the value of like, here you get a pen. Good job, Jeff. You get a pen. And the winner gets like a BMW. I'd be like, well, shit, I don't need another pen. I want the BMW. So as long as you don't remove the incentive like to do better, but like sometimes people say like, well, if the incentive to do better is a trophy or a financial gains or a reward, is that really helpful? And they've done tons of studies on it, because if you look at the most famous people, the best of their crafts in the world, most of them turn into terrible human beings anyways, right? Because they get attached to winning, the fame, and then when they leave it, they got nothing. Look, there's tons of documentaries out now about people like this, and then like they leave the system and they're just like, yeah, I should have focused more on my family or this and that.
Pretty much like any high level athlete ever, almost.
Yeah, right. All of them are the same, and like they have tons of accolades and people love them around the world, but if they drop dead the next day, their family is not going to care that they won 9 championships. Like some person who cheered for them will love the fact they won 9 championships, but their family might not. So it's a weird thing. Like I do agree that I think things are handed out too widely now, and like especially with kids in school where like they basically pass every kid. They don't hold them back. There's not the resources there for people to devote the time that's required to get everyone on the same level, which is kind of sad. Like my daughter does like horse riding lesson and they do shows and stuff. And in a training show, like everyone, even if there's 7 horses, someone gets first place, second place, third place, fourth, fifth, sixth. And 6 gets a ribbon, and it's different, smaller than first. But they all get one because it's just a training show. And clearly you can tell they all still want the first place one, but they're just happy they get a ribbon. But if they go to a real show, there's only first, second, third. Right. And so there's, I think at a certain appropriate level, like those stuff should become reality in life. Like, oh, you want to participate at this next level and you really want that trophy, then you can give them that motivation. Like you really want that new job. Well, you're going to put in the hours. Do you want to win this award? You're a up and coming film director and you want to have a film at TIFF. It's not going to be easy, so it's not going to be handed to you unless you're like, all the right people. And even then, it's still not going to be handed to you, which is where sports is a great equalizer, I find. You can know everyone in the world and still not make a major league professional team. It's based on merit and skill alone. So yeah, I think the younger generations, we just allowed it to happen because we didn't want to hurt people's feelings. Again, it's an overcorrection, right? Like society has been so terrible to people. Like women only got rights like 50 years ago, and like people were terrible to their kids and they raised them like as solo parents and just left them in the woods to play. And now they're like, hey, well, it's beneficial to be part of your child's life and like care and support them instead of just yell at them and say like, if you're not getting a job by the time you're 13, you're out of this house. Like the dynamics have changed. I do it with my parents all the time. I'm like, well, it wasn't like that back then. It's different now, but the world is different now. Like it's a scarier place. Like I don't. Some people would argue that like it was probably worse during World War I, World War II, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna disagree with that. Like we have some amazing benefits of living in society now. But we also have like tons of stuff that make our lives terrible without knowing it. Also, now we all know too much, right? Like every parent can go online and read 1,000 articles about like why their kids should be able to do something, and the teenagers can go online and read 1 billion articles or watch 1 billion videos on YouTube about how easy it is to hustle their way into like making YouTube ads and becoming a millionaire. And they just go like, fuck yeah, this seems easy, everyone else is doing it, why can't I do it? And look at all these nice participation trophies I've got here. Like I've clearly got the skills. And then they get to the real world. Someone's like, "No, you're shit. Get out of here." And they're like, excuse me, but I'm really good at this, so I think you should give me a fair shot." And they just don't get it. And some of those people are doomed. Like we've been hiring different positions for the last little while, and I was hired for one creative position. And some of the applicants I got, one of them was like a line cook. One of them worked in a carpet factory and other places that they didn't even have the skill set required. And I'm like, is a robot putting these applications in? These people actually think because they just went to school or wrote that they're creative, that they could do this job. And that they might just be naive or dumb. I don't know, but they certainly didn't get the job.
Actually, speaking on that, how do you choose people? Like whenever you look at people's resumes or anything, it's like how do you choose? And you're like, this person might be good or this person has potential, especially when, for example, let's say they are coming out of school when they might not have the experience.
Yeah.
How do you decide?
Or a resume. Yeah, well, like table stakes is normally like, okay, if you're going to tell me I'm looking at kids coming out of school, so okay, I know they're all coming out of school, they're all going to be a certain level. We'll just use resumes in our industry as portfolios or show me the work that you've done, you know. So that's table stakes. That like, is it good? Like, is it, if it's so awful and you're just like, man, this person, ugh, I feel bad, which I certainly see. And then other times you get stuff and it's all comparable, right? Like everyone's work is kind of similar, especially students sometimes, so they get the same assignments. You get a couple that jump out. But then there's no real way of knowing without having any sort of dialogue like this, one-on-one. Like, I don't care how talented the person is. It could be Jesus that like can like snap his fingers and make like a campaign appear. If he or she or they are a complete asshole and just don't get along with other people, then I don't want them near me, you know, or other people. So I think it should be the same in most organizations where like attitudes just don't fly anymore. Like people don't have time for it. You need people, and you need people that have those collaborative abilities, but also are like strong independence, you know, like you need someone that can work on their own without you like babysitting them, like back to like the parents that overlooked over their kids doing everything. And they can just, you can just be like, okay, that person, give them this project. I can check in like maybe once or twice, but they're not going to forget to do stuff. The skill side of it, in certain aspects, I'd rather know that they can have a creative thinking brain versus like a technical one. The technical skills of like, you know, learn how, if it was in your seat, like learn how to use this camera, or what's the difference between this one and that one, or like how do I use Photoshop? If they don't have those skills as well developed as some others, it's not as important to me as the ability to like come up with ideas and independent thinking. That you can't really teach, I find is really tricky. You can give people like, here's how to come up with great ideas, and they can practice it, but really it's kind of innate. It's one of those things, you know, like there's reasons why only a certain percentage of people are professional athletes and professional musicians. I hate to say it, but to some degree, they're kind of born with it. You know, they're born with some sort of something snapping a little different in the brain. So it's once you see them and you can figure out like which ones are determined to really dig in versus the others that like are doing it because they think this could be cool. It's easy to sort of, well, you get a lot of them like, oh, I heard graphic design like so cool, or art direction, you know, I'm a creative director, man. Look, yeah. I run a blog. I'm like, you haven't done anything. Um, so it's easy to weed out the fakes from the ones that are really truly passionate about it. Because if you want to make a go at anything, it doesn't matter what your profession is. You better be damn passionate about it and not care what other people think. Otherwise,
Do you
you're
find that
fucked.
there's a lot of creatives in Halifax?
Yeah, the word creatives is very broad, but I think because of the schools, NSCC and NASCAD in particular, you've got a small populous base of like the human population of Halifax. I don't think we've hit 500,000 yet.
No, I think we're like we're close, very close.
Yeah, so you've got two big schools there already that are well renowned, and then you've got all the universities, and they also pump out creative people per se. We think of it as the creative arts, like painting, drawing, writing, movie making. But I look like creativity, like I would consider an engineer to be super creative. Like I can draw you the picture of the bridge, but there's no way I'm going to figure out how to build the damn thing. And in my opinion, the person knows how to build it's probably more important than the person knows how to draw it. But eventually, after building enough bridges, said engineer is going to have a great idea of how to draw them too. But if you look at like a big movie set, right? You get like people who are electricians and grips and makeup artists and stuff like that. Like they all contribute to what we call a creative product, but they might not consider themselves like a creative person. Like would you guys consider grips and ACs and that like creatives?
Well, that's actually a really interesting point because we had a director of photography on the podcast, and he literally was talking about this, and he was talking about how like he'll get on a set and be like, okay, I know I want like a light from there, but I have no idea how I'm gonna do that. And he's like, before I got into the industry, like I just didn't understand the importance of a grip or a gaffer, where you go to like your key grip or your gaffer and be like, how the hell can we do this? And they're like, oh no, okay, I've seen this problem before, so what we're gonna do is, and then it's just like, I'm gonna hold a mirror here, it's gonna deflect up off that painting over there and then hit into the character's eye, and you're just like, what? how?
Exactly.
how do you come up with that?
Right. And that's where like I talk about like the craft, right? Like if you're really into lighting, that's you, do you don't like maybe then you decide you can write an actual script too. And like that certainly happens where people start learning about the business. Like I think the most talented people in the creative arts normally have had a wide background, have had like, they started at the bottom, as they all say, and they did this job, then this job, then they did this. And the whole way up or along the path, they just soaked in as much as they could so that they have empathy towards the amount of work and people that's involved to create something. And it could be like a work of art, like a painting too. Some people just think, oh, one person. I'm like, it's never one person doing, maybe one person painting it, but it might be like a crew of 20 people that this person has on their team to assemble it all and make it happen, or support network around them. And I just don't think people understand that, like, if they want to get into like a creative industry, that there's a lot more avenues to do so than just the ones that people always see in the limelight, on the red carpets and such. That can be just as rewarding. I'm more fascinated with all the people behind the scenes, to be honest, because it's the stuff I can't do. I'm like, I'm like the people that can light a scene and make it what it looks like, or figure out like, oh, we should film it on this type of film. Oh, we don't have any. Well, we'll make some. I'm like, okay, well, that's crazy. Or this camera doesn't exist yet. Well, we'll build one. Or like, that style of like animation doesn't render properly. Well, we'll build a new Unreal Engine that can render anything and change the world that way. Like, so I think there's ways to influence the world that wouldn't be quote unquote creative, that I think end up becoming the most creative resources that we all have.
Oh, totally. I feel like literally you could be creative in any profession. It's like you could be a doctor and be creative. There's no, like, you can do everything in a creative way. And I mean, you see it all the time, even with like any businesses that start. It's like somebody could have been I don't know, a garbage man, but then they figure out this new fascinating way of doing things. So suddenly they are now a creative because they're an entrepreneur and they found a way of doing something that hasn't been done before. Maybe they do it in a completely different way.
Yeah. It's like creativity is it like people always think it's like some artistic work, but yeah, like a doctor, it's just a different way of imagining something, right? Like having an original idea and imagining it this a way that someone else hadn't thought about. Like your point, like, how do I light this? Like, I don't know. Well, I know how. Let's do it like this. Right. That's being creative.
Well,
And they don't teach it a lot. I do find like they don't formally teach it. Every human on earth has the ability to be creative because it's innate. It's built into us. What I said earlier is also true about skill and craft, about being able to do it, because a lot of them then just don't harness it and grow with it. It's not like riding a bike, and which I think is a bullshit analogy or saying anyways. I've ridden a bike my whole life, and when I get on one now, I'm terrified. I can still ride it, but I'll probably crash if I try and do something. Um, but yeah, it's I always find it's a bit of a shame where people might like drop out or fall out of pursuing something because they feel they can't get it quick enough. They're like, oh man, I really want to do this, but I suck at it. I'm like, yeah, you might suck at it for 20 years, but if you give up, you'll never know. Like,
well, that's the thing with. I mean, for us, for example, I mean, I would say like I would say we're only now even like figuring out our style as filmmakers, and like we've been creating videos, if you will, for like 8 years. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah, I've actually had an idea of making a little like YouTube thing where we go over our previous videos and absolutely,
yeah,
roast
roast them. Because like you look back at some work you've done even like 2 years ago and you're like, wow, it's like somebody paid me to do this. Like that's incredible.
you feel the same. I feel the same way. I look at stuff like sometimes it's even like you did yesterday, and you're like, why did I do that? But you stick with it, right? Because you like to do it, and a lot of people just give up because they've had that thing we talked about earlier. It's like you do something, and then people just say, "Yeah, that's really good," and then they only hear that, and then they get to a certain point, and other people are like, "No, that's really bad.
Yeah.
That's terrible. Have you not done anything better since then?" No, because no one told me it wasn't good. I think a little bit of criticism and self-criticism, self-critique is probably the most important without beating yourself to death about it. Um, I'm very critical of myself in all aspects of life, but I understand too that like I'm capable of doing certain things, whether they're creative physically. Like I'm not going to climb Mount Everest. Like I'm incapable of doing that. Could I train to do it? Maybe. Do I want to? No. Would I die? Probably. But I'm capable of like walking up a hill. So I think people just have to have realistic expectations of what they want out of life or what they want out of a career. Because I do find sometimes the younger people that I've seen come through, they think they're going to jump from like walking up Citadel Hill to Everest in like 1 or 2 years. And they don't realize like, there's a lot of steps in between. I don't know why they're like that. I don't know what they're doing to them in schools, but I think people have to be, well, I know what they're doing in schools. They're just taking their money, right? Saying, here you go. Thank you. Go out into the world. Like it's not in the school's best interest to fail these kids and hold them back. They just want to take the money and get in another group. As long as they have enough students that are successful coming out of each year, they'll be fine. So, yeah.
No, it's always a very interesting one, especially with the fact that, I mean, as you mentioned, it's like so many people think that they'll come into whatever. It's like you start learning to play the piano a month in, you're like, I'm still bad. It's like, well, yeah. It's like, of course you're
playing
bad.
for a month, yeah.
But it's like so many people end up quitting before they even realize that they might have the skill to do something. Because I feel like most people can probably be okay at most things that they try. They will not be maybe great or will not be the best, but it's like they can be okay at it. But it's like some people don't even get to that point. It's like they get to the point where they're like, they realize that there's so many things that they don't know and they just quit because they're like, oh, now it's too hard.
Yeah. I just always equate it to like going to the gym. It's like New Year's resolutions. All these people are like, I'm going to go to the gym. but people don't like going to the gym, right? And which is why they like do it for 3 months and then they quit because they fucking hate it. But if someone really did like going to the gym, they probably would never, they would just be like, you know what, this really does suck, but I really enjoy it, even though it sucks. Like by the time you get there, it's normally okay, right? And that's the hardest part, is like getting there and keep going. Um, like I have days where I'm just like, man, this job sucks. I'd rather just go pick up garbage or something, or like nothing's going right. Like, is anything ever going to go right? But then the next day, like everything can go right. And, that's kind of the beauty of some of the industries that we get to work in. It's not boring. So like you can be passionate about it. Like, sure, I'm sure there's people who are very passionate about bookkeeping and are really good at it, but they might not have the same abilities during their day to have a different array of stimulant coming at them. It's just like numbers and stuff all the time. Where like in our professions, it's like, oh, you're going to make a movie today. What's it about? Baby elephants. And tomorrow it's about crackheads. And the next week it's about police reform. It's like, Jesus, like the amount of different information that you have to pertain and then learn about just helps keep things more interesting than being like singular focused on one thing the whole time.
One thing I wanted to ask you about as well is you mentioned like the ability to self-criticize and to accept criticism. What do you think, like let's say you're working with a client, a brand or whatever, how do you kind of toe the line between making sure you get the best creative output versus what, like aligning with their brand per se, or if I don't know, they're very stubborn about something, like how do you kind of balance that?
Jeff is like, I've been trying to balance this for the last 20 years and I still haven't figured it
out. Well, in all honesty, it has normally nothing to do with the brand. It has everything to do with the relationship.
Okay.
Like, like it could be the CEO of some company and then like of the biggest company in the world. And if you can't get along with that person, then it's not going to work. So then like, okay, go down the ring and all the into the organization. Who else can you get in close with to persuade them to do something, who then can persuade their boss, who then is like chums with the CEO, and you get in that way, right? So I find no matter what, there's always someone. I always ask sometimes, like, is there a decision maker in this room? Like, is there someone actually in this room? I don't do it like, hey, you, do you get to make the calls? But like, before I go to a meeting that I haven't met people, I sometimes ask, I'm like, is there a person in this room who on their own, without all the others, can single-handedly be like, approved, I like it, I don't like it, you're fired. And if the answer is no, I'm like, okay, who do I have to figure out can get us in touch with that person, or who do I just have to make sure is on our side and that we get a good rapport with to ensure that whatever they say to said person is good. And that's where like probably so much great creative things or just products and general human innovations just die on a boardroom floor somewhere, where someone's like can't get over the relationship, like the human aspect of it. Like, fuck, I'm having a bad day. Anything that comes across my desk today, like, watch out. And like that happens. So like, it doesn't matter. Like the greatest ideas on earth can all be there. And I'm sure there's thousands of them that have died just because someone like didn't eat the right thing for breakfast, or like their wife fought with them, So it's really, I've learned the hard way. It's all about relationships and people, and just learning to understand people and communicate rationally, and understand that people have their own shit going on in their lives. Like your interaction with them for half an hour might be the best part of the day. Hopefully it is. Like the other part of your day, you might not know what they've been through. So try not to judge, even though we all do it anyways. Be empathetic and just learn to listen and see if you can pick up on little cues. But I do try and do my homework, like depending on who I'm presenting to, we can all socially creep people now to some degree. So you can ask like, hey, we're working with this new client, and someone might be like, oh yeah, they're a great client, but they're really difficult. They really can be stubborn. It's like, okay, I know that going in and be like, oh, is there a reason why, or can you help me understand like what they really like, or they don't want to talk about, oh yeah, they love the strategy, but they don't really like talking about all the details. I'm like, okay, I won't go into detail about stuff. I'll just talk high level strategy, you know? So like be able to make a plan, you know, it's like going on a date with someone, you know, just you just go willy-nilly and just, I don't date, I'm married, but like you just show up and like not just be like, whatever, fuck yeah, it was me. But most people put on a front, right? They're like, yes, I dress like this every day and I'm always well groomed and wear pants and da 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 da. And yes, I like dogs and hiking and whatever the hell else is out there. And
Walking
then
on the beach.
6 months later, they're like, you're not like that at all. And like, you want to be able to get to that point already with clients as fast as you can, so you can understand like the real things about them.
It's interesting. It's interesting too that you mentioned that, just because like it's something that I had no idea about going into like participating in the creative industry. It was just like I just figured, oh, I'll just get to show up and make things. Like I don't have to talk to people. I don't have to like get people to like me or like, you know, be like interact with people. I mean, I would say that I'm more of an introvert, and I really like my kind of alone and quiet time. But it's like it's really interesting too, though, because being in the creative industry has really brought out, I feel like, a different side of me where that I didn't even know that I kind of had, where I really enjoy talking to people and I really enjoy those interactions and building those relationships. And like, just because most people that you get to meet are cool people typically. Yep. And like everyone has their unique story, and it just, yeah, I don't know. It's just a lot of fun.
And to end it on that note, because I know, Jeff, you still have some things on the go today, yeah. I'm sure.
Mainly children to go get, but yes.
Yeah, do you have anything else you want to kind of end things on, or any words of advice or wisdom or anything that you would like to plug?
Well, I don't need to plug anything unless I don't know if like what types of wisdom I've rolled out today, but for me, the only thing that like I try and tell people that I've had come in here that are younger or maybe just coming up and not sure what they want to do is like, you're gonna fail, right? Like you're gonna fucking suck at it. You're gonna second guess yourself. We all think we're hacks. You guys already mentioned it, like cutting pro your own work. And when you start thinking like, oh, I'm the best, I'm the best. Like sometimes people who say that like aren't they're like you. They're maybe super introverted and they're actually terrible, but they just front by saying they're the best. So just accept the fact that you're gonna fail, but just get used to failing and then like accept it, learn from it, which is the biggest thing I tell people. I've let people fail where I've like done it, and I've told the creative people even here, I've done it to them. Like, I'm gonna watch you crash and burn because I know that this is so wrong, but I'm gonna let you present it anyways. And I would go as far as like warning the client, like, look, I'm just trying, this is a teachable moment here. And you have to have a relationship with that where a client's like, you're wasting my money. You know, like, no, I'm trying to make the people that work on your business better and understanding what you understand to be valuable. And then it would be terrible. Then I'm like, yeah, how did that feel? And they're like, shitty. I'm like, is that gonna happen again? They're like, no. I'm like, do you want me to tell you why I did? And I'm like, yes. But if they give up, I've seen people that get like, some people who just can't take criticism and rejection and failure. They just get so bent out of shape. And like in this industry specifically, like, you know, there's so much of it every day. Like you guys even, you know, you might pitch on a bunch of stuff to try and win jobs and you maybe get like what, 1 in 5, maybe you guys are better than that, like so you're still losing a bunch. Like I might come up with 10 creative ideas and there's no way I'm going to produce all 10, so 9 of them go in the waste bin, or a client might kill all 10, you know, and then back to the drawing board you go. And like if every time that happens I like went home like crying, like I would be dehydrated. Like it's hard. It's really hard to like sometimes, because people get very protective when you're working on something for so long, and then to have someone just crush it for maybe no particular reason other than their dog barked at it and didn't like it. But when you look for logic in illogical things, you're destined to beat yourself up into a pulp. So that's my biggest piece of advice is fail. Just fail harder. Learn from your failures.
I mean, I think what you learn very quickly is it's not the criticism is never about you or your work. In a way, it's always to like the client always has their things, right? It's like you might be the greatest, you might be an Oscar-winning director, but it's like that client might just not be the right person. Like they just might not want what you have.
Yeah.
So it's like they might be like, "This is absolute shit," and you're like, "But I have an Oscar." But that
Yeah.
doesn't matter. It's like the
Doesn't matter.
criticism is not about you. It's
Yeah,
not.
exactly.
It's from their perspective, and it's like you take it and you can apply it to them, but it's like nothing is personal.
Yeah, there was a great Michael Jordan ad insane where he said, like, I've missed 10 shots to win a championship. I've done this, I failed at this, I failed at this, I didn't do this. And then at the end he said, and that's why I'm the greatest. Or I'm great, right? Because he's like, he understood how much it hurt. And then he's like, I don't want to go through that again. So what do I got to do to make it not happen as often? Because it's inevitability that you're going to fail in life.
He
It takes a lot of pressure off when you're just like, I'm an idiot, I'm a failure, because you're already at the bottom. There's only a way to go up,
yeah, he actually he didn't even make his high school basketball team.
No, like,
Yeah.
So me and him are pretty similar.
yeah,
I didn't make my high school basketball team either.
I didn't even try out, so I must be around pretty good. Maybe I could have been the next Michael Jordan.
You're gonna own the NBA one day.
No, I'd have no desire to do that. But yeah.
But yeah, on that note, we appreciate you coming on, Jeff, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for listening to our conversation with Jeff Simpson. To support the podcast, please consider subscribing below and liking the video. And finally, I'll leave you with this quote from Mahatma Gandhi. To believe in something and not to live it is dishonest. Thank you again for listening. We hope to see you next time.